What's up, everybody? So I've been playing around this week with a little different, some protocols I haven't used for a long time. And I think before I get into exactly what they are and all that stuff, it's important to remember when you go to the gym, it should be fun. Like, you should be enjoying yourself. And that doesn't mean that it's not hard, but it should be something you look forward to doing. If it's something you're dreading, maybe you should find something slightly different. And that's, again, not to say that you're not challenging yourself, but there are thousands of different protocols and methods that you can try that I'm sure you haven't dug into yet. There's a lot of people who get, whatever their first introduction is into weight training, they don't deviate from that, and they never really sample other methods, they never really sample other protocols, and then they do this thing that they don't really enjoy doing, but they know they kind of should for the rest of their life, and they never really look forward to it. So there are many, many different ways to get stronger, bigger, faster, whatever. But there are some underpinning principles that have to be adhered to, otherwise it's not going to work. So as long as those principles are stuck to, then you can branch out a little bit. Because I'm working through a couple books right now, but if you look at like some German sports development, it's different than how the Russians view it. It's different than how Romania approaches some things. I mean, they all have their own slight variations and tweaks to how they develop athletes, but it leaves some insight, because now you can say, well, what are they doing? And they'll lay out the protocols and go try them. But before you just jump in and try this stuff, you got to remember that a lot of this stuff, it's important to understand the context first. And the context overwhelmingly is these athletes are professional athletes that they were documenting at the time. That was their full-time job. And then you can further break that down and look into, well, was it a communist country? Is it a democratic country? And that matters for the context of understanding how much stress they are imposing on these athletes. So, and then there's always the conversation that gets fucking old, because I couldn't tell you an exact percentage, but I can tell you the overwhelming majority of athletes who are at an elite level are using some sort of performance enhancing drug. And people want to argue that and say that that's not true. They want to believe that their favorite athlete doesn't use anything, blah, 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 blah. I promise you that's not the case. And so when you see these protocols that are laid out, understand that they are professional athletes. That is their full-time job. They're on some sort of performance-enhancing drug protocol, and therefore the volume is going to be, a tad ridiculous. So that's not to say that these protocols you see don't have value. They certainly do. What I'm saying is just take them with a grain of salt if you want to try some of this stuff, and probably try half of what they're recommending. And you will also probably need to adjust the frequency by which you're trying some of it. So anyway, here's exactly what I've been playing with this week, and I'll tell you exactly who and what I'm using. So not drug-wise, but if I was using anything drug-wise, I'd be bigger. But I'm saying, as far as like what protocols I'm using. So what I've been doing this week is I've been working up to a heavy single for the day, for a single lift. Now, a heavy single is different than a 1 rep max. And here's how. A 1 rep max is going to be a planned day where, this is my competition date. I'm going to leave it all out there because I've trained X amount of weeks for this singular training event, right? That is psychologically psychologically stressful, it's physically stressful, your nervous system gets wrecked. I mean, like there's a lot of things going on. Whereas a heavy single will generally float around 90% that you should be able to hit on most days. That's not to say to do it all back to back to back, but you could walk into the gym, do your warm-ups, have a high degree of confidence that you could hit 90% for a fairly good-looking rep. So, and if it goes plus minus a couple percent, cool. You need to be all right with that. So here's what I did this week. Was I took my time, worked up to a heavy single. But here's the big thing: is you have to know when to call it, because it does get very addicting. You keep thinking, well, I can do another rep that's better. Maybe I could add another 5 pounds, and you start chasing weight, chasing reps you know you shouldn't take. But it gets really, really addicting once you start lifting on a regular basis. So anyway, worked up to a heavy single, and then cut the sets there, and then for a little bit of added volume at that higher intensity, what I did was, there's something called Prilepin's chart. So have a look, go ahead and Google Prilepin's chart, and you'll see this chart from this sports scientist who documented all the reps and sets and percentages that some Olympic weightlifters performed. And then he developed this chart to say, okay, well, here's how many reps and sets, or reps per set you should be doing. Here's the optimal range. Here's kind of the optimal number that you should be doing within this range. So it's been used quite a bit in powerlifting and Olympic lifting circles for a while. And as with anything, it receives a lot of criticism, but it's also receives a lot of praise. And that's what you'll also find when you get deeper into any sort of training protocols, methods, whatever, is you have a lot of really smart people who argue both sides of the aisle, which makes it kind of a pain in the ass to figure out, well, who's right? Well, they probably both have their points, and you'll probably have to try some stuff to figure out if it works for you or not. So anyway, so I worked up to my heavy single, and then I took 75% from that Prilepin's chart of my daily single and performed a few extra sets with the protocol laid out as far as 75% for X number of sets of 3. And then I moved on and did a few more exercises for some support work, but that was it. And you'd be amazed how quickly people can overcomplicate this stuff. But it is one of those things where I enjoy doing that. It's a fun one, and it spices up the monotony, which is, you know, in some capacity, you should be changing things. I don't believe you should be changing things every single workout, because you need to have, or excuse me, every training session rather. I don't believe you should change things every single training session, because you are, you know, you have to give your body time to get good at the movement, to understand what you're going to ask of it with this method or protocol or whatever. But I do believe that you will need to rotate something, whether it's hand position, tempo, load on the bar, whatever. You do need to vary something every 4 to 6 weeks tends to be the best. But at the same time, if you are continuing to make progress past the 6-week mark, screw it, keep going until you plateau, and then we'll take a step back and look at things. But anyway, my point is, get out there, try some new things, play with some new protocols, and just enjoy your training. That's the biggest factor, is just enjoying getting in the gym, doing something. Hell, even get out of the gym, run some hills, do something you enjoy. Start with that, be consistent, show up, have fun. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, you can always get a hold of me, Travis at dhpcoaching.net.